In this episode, I discuss baptism, Satan, and Lacan with Dario Valese. Welcome to the Bottom Turtle Podcast. Hello everybody, welcome back to the Bottom Turtle Podcast. I'm theoretical physicist Dr. Shannon Ray, and I just want to start off by thanking everyone who's still listening to the podcast. I know I haven't been uploading frequently, but that's because I've been way more active on YouTube recently. So if you are interested in my content and you're an avid listener and you haven't been aware of my YouTube content, I'll leave a link in the description of this episode so you can go to my YouTube channel and check out what I've been posting so far. But I do want to post more frequently. I do want to upload more frequently. I want to leave the intro brief in this episode. So since I've been away, I've been recording a lot with a friend of mine, Dario Valese. Dario is a graduate student at the Foscari University of Venice in Italy. And he has a bachelor's degree in literature, and he's currently working on a master's degree in Italian philology, literature, and linguistics. And his thesis that he's working on now is to analyze the poetic work of Eugenio Montale, who, according to him, is the greatest Italian poet of the last century. And he is studying and analyzing this using the language of Lacanian psychoanalysis. So the way I met Dario is on one of my YouTube videos on information and broken symmetry, where I make the argument that information is broken symmetry. He made a comment in the comment section talking about how my description of information in this way is consistent with understanding the Hegelian dialectic as interpreted through Lacan, which is a practice that has been made popular by Slovenian philosopher Slavoj Žižek. So he left a very interesting comment in the comment section, and it really got me interested. And that's one of the reasons why I created my YouTube channel, is I wanted to do research, but I honestly, my interests have grown beyond physics and mathematics and have fallen into things like theology and philosophy. And so his comment and his interest was exactly what I was looking for in terms of collaboration. So I immediately started sending him emails, and we started interacting back and forth. And since then, we've recorded a lot of we've made a lot of recordings where he is trying to explain to me Lacanian psychoanalysis. So Dario, I've been interacting with him for months. He's become a good friend of mine, and he is something like an academic's academic. He is a very scholarly person, very intelligent. And while working with him, I've learned a lot about Lacan and his ideas. And they have really awakened me. They've really had an impact on how I think. And it's similar to what happened when I met Ryan, where Ryan, of course, has a mathematical and physics background, but he also has a deep interest in like theology and philosophy. And when you meet people like this, you get this immediate resonance of a shared spirit. And so it's a similar situation that's happening with Dario. This is something that happens pretty often as I meet somebody who has a particular interest, but as I communicate with them, I start realizing that they're just saying the exact same thing that I'm saying, but in a different way. And that's the whole point to my podcast, is that I am trying to communicate to you guys that what I think the podcast is a giant unitary transformation. And all I'm doing are symmetry transformations where you're changing something without changing it. The difference is only a matter of perspective. And so these are symmetry transformations. And so when I meet someone like Dario, and I meet someone like Ryan, or I meet someone like Reasonable Fidelis, who's a recurring character in this show, and I start interacting with them, what I start finding is that by interacting with them, I am building the symmetry between our worlds. And this also goes with my friend Phil, who I haven't talked to you guys about, but he's another really good friend of mine who has his own world called Monument World, that I've been talking with him for the last couple of years. And we've been building that symmetry where we can actually see how these two different worlds stitch together and how they're the same. And all of that process of finding the symmetry between, say, Lacanian psychoanalysis and my understanding of information and symmetry from the perspective of a physicist and a mathematician. All of that is doing the work of building the algebraic structure so that I can so that we can translate each other's worlds to each other. So we can translate each other's worlds with fidelity. So that's what I've been doing with Dario. And in this episode, this is a conversation I'm having with Dario. And in later episodes, I will break down the Lacanian ideas that we discuss. So as of now, just try to listen and enjoy. But I do want to point out that at the beginning of this conversation, I'm talking about this idea of ache and spiraling. And this is a Lacanian concept that we're talking about. One thing that I wanted to point out is that I'm misspeaking, because it's not the ache that you spiral around, it's the lack. So within the subject, within like a subjective being within the Lacanian language, they're called something called a barred subject. And a barred subject is barred across these two registers that Lacan has, called the symbolic and the real. And so the symbolic, you have to think of that as a space of information. Remember, if you listen to this podcast enough, you know that I have this breaking of my reality or my understanding of reality into the space of symmetry and the space of like structure. You can go back and listen to my episode. It's turtled all the way down is the correct answer to be reminded of what I'm talking about. But if you listen to this podcast enough, you know that I have this like when I'm explaining my understanding or model of reality, there's a split between symmetry and like the realm of information. And so in Lacan, when you have your identity, it's partially within the symbolic order, which is to say that there is some information, like there is some language that can be spoken where to pose your identity. So the example I always use again is like you look at someone's identity as the intersection of all of their macro identities. So, for example, you have me, who is an American, who is male, who is a scientist, who is a father. Like each one of these identities, as I give more information, as I give more of these identities, I give higher precision information, which points to Shannon as opposed to somebody else. And so this would be something like my identity within the symbolic order. But as I've also been pointing out, is that it's not possible to point absolutely. So to be able to point absolutely, you would need something like infinite information. So for whatever constraint data you give, there's always a symmetry of micro identity. There's always a symmetry of identities that are consistent with whatever information that you provided. So for example, if you give the information physicist, you have the symmetry of all the people who have the spirit of physicists. And that symmetry is smaller than if I just gave you the information of human, because human contains all humans, physicist contains all humans that are physicists. So the symmetry or the size of entropy or the size of the lack is smaller for the information physicist as opposed to just human. And so the point in this conversation is that this lack that exists is inherent to the symbolic order. In other words, this lack, this emptiness is unavoidable, and it's a manifestation of the real. So think of the real as being in the space of like the pure symmetry. And in fact, you'll hear Dario say something like the pure signifier. And when I shared with him my poem, it's turtled all the way down as the correct answer. And I start off with the idea that anything that is made singular has nothing with which to be compared. Therefore, there is no information. And when I was explaining this idea of a singular, where there's no compare and contrast, therefore there's no self and other, there's no reference. This singular is unity, and this would be something like the pure signifier. And so this lack that exists within us is something like the void within us that cannot be totalized within the symbolic order that anchors our identity. And it is a representation of the pure signifier. So it's something like when you are within your awareness of your identity, you have this lack that's missing inside of you. And so part of your desire is to feel complete again. And so you spiral this lack. This is associated with like your muse. Like, why do you do what you do? Like, what are you trying to accomplish? Like when you do things, what are you trying to fulfill? You have something you're trying to fill in actions that you take. And it seems as though this incompleteness that we sense, that we're aware of, this is us being aware of our lack, and it causes an ache, and this ache drives our desires. So these are very Lacanian concepts and ideas. And so these are things that are going to be discussed within the podcast. And within this episode, I start off like explaining to everyone the moment in which I was ready to get baptized. So since you last heard me post something, I have been baptized. I am now a fully Christian. And this episode starts off with me explaining to you the moment I became ready to get baptized. And this moment has to do with spiraling my lack. Like, what is my lack? And I'm spiraling it, and what appears within that lack. And so, I hope you guys can enjoy this episode. The conversation is pretty interesting. We talk a lot about Satan. There's a big conversation about Satan and the concept of evil and sin. And this is part of the reason why I actually got baptized and became Christian, is that as a scientist, there is this strong attachment to like logic and reason. But if you listen to my episode, The Ultimate Abstraction, and the faith components, if you listen to these episodes, I've come to the realization in the last few years that to be complete, you need something like a faith component. And then that this nature of incompleteness that we're dealing with is inherent and unavoidable. There's always this incompleteness. And as such, you never have full information. And every time you come across something like a paradox, which is a true contradiction, you almost have to trust that the contradiction itself contains truth. And so this is this notion of like embracing paradox. And so for me, coming into relationship with the Bible itself has so much profound truth in it. And what happened is that things like the crucifixion, the resurrection, but just like just once you start to comprehend the thesis of the Bible, what it's claiming, there's like an overarching story of this concept of the fall, which is like our initial trauma. It's almost like the trauma of being birthed, or the trauma of the birth of consciousness. You have something like the fall, and this fall separates us from the whole. It separates us from, as Dario would say, the pure signifier, the pure symmetry. And this separation creates a scar. So the scar is your identity within the symbolic order. So that would be like the information, the constraint data that points to you. That's like your scar. But there's still a wound that exists. And that wound is the lack. And and within the Bible, this is like the foundational, this is like the beginning of it. Like this the beginning of it. And with the crucifixion of Jesus, that's like the moment in which we reconcile back with God, to get this sense of completeness. And Jesus enters into our lack. And it was that realization that made me get ready to get baptized. But what I'm trying to say is something like, the biggest hurdle for me to get baptized was really accepting the supernatural nature of the resurrection as a logical person. But the profundity of the Bible, as I read it, I remember asking myself, like, where did this thing come from? And I started realizing that a lot of the stuff that I was communicating in the bottom turtle and everything was already there. Like, there's nothing new under the sun. And that the Bible itself was convincing at an intellectual level. Almost like our world is split from the physical and then the metaphysical, or the conceptual. And the conceptual world that's constructed within the Bible maps so strongly to our reality. And sin, and the nature of sin and evil, and its model of it is so accurate. And so what I'm trying to say is something like, the poetic depth, the profound depth of the Bible was very convincing, but I needed an extra oomph to get over the hurdle of like really living in faith. And the language of Lacan, by studying with Dario, really helped me comprehend. And so within this series of episodes with Dario, we touched this topic of evil quite a bit. And so what I want to do is, in the next series of episodes I'm going to upload, I want to release my conversations with Dario, but I also want to explain to you my journey with the Bible. And I think that the crucifixion itself is one of those is like one of the things that I have a very strong need to communicate because of where it fits in the narrative of the Bible in reconciliation with God, and this idea of trying to reconcile and become complete. And yeah, so I think that explaining the crucifixion requires an explanation of like sin and Satan, because that's where forgiveness comes from. Like at the cross, judgment is transfigured or transformed into grace. And the paradoxical nature of it, like it's so profound. It's like infinitely profound. It's infinitely profound. And I want to sincerely communicate the depth of that profundity as best I can so that you can understand why someone like me would get baptized and become Christian. And at the same time, you can listen to my podcast so you know how I think. I'm still the same person. And you can see my development to where I was started from 4 years ago to where I am now. And hopefully you can see like why. Anyway, this intro went on way longer than I expected. I'll definitely leave timestamps for you guys to skip if you want to skip this intro and just start straight into the conversation. Hopefully what I've provided here is sufficient for you guys to follow some of what we're saying, but some of the conversation just regarding like, you know, Dario's understanding of Satan and kind of like my position, you can skip around if you need to with what I'm saying. But also keep in mind that Dario has a pretty decent Italian accent. He speaks English well, but he does have a pretty thick accent. So please be patient with that if you can. And I will upload this onto YouTube where there's video and subtitles if you find it difficult to listen to purely on audio. So please go check that out. Also, make sure and share this with a friend. Please go and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And my goodness, I mean, for all the people who have been listening to this for the last 4 years, or even if you picked it up recently, or you listened to half the episodes, or whatever it is, like whatever your degree of commitment has been to this podcast, I really, really appreciate you guys. And hopefully you feel connected to me and that you know, that this has done a modicum of what I was hoping that it would do. But I'm not giving up. I'll continue pushing forward. And if anyone's interested, I mean, if you want to be on the podcast, if you want to be a guest on the podcast, you know, send me an email at thebottomturtlepodcast@gmail.com. Or if you want me to do something like a live stream, you know, just send me an email if you're interested. But yeah, without further ado, please enjoy the conversation with Dario, and I'll talk to you guys later. Peace. So one way we can describe this is the idea of birth. And think of it as when you're born through a tear in the symmetry. Like there's a symmetry, and then you're born through it, and that is the initial scar. So your birth creates an initial scar. And that initial scar recognizes that it's an asymmetry, a break in symmetry that has been separated from something like the eternal, you know. And you're dragged into the world. And so you can think of it as like a holy or sacred scar. Because I think that you can gain extra scars while living in the world that can shape your identity. But imagine something like you start off with an initial scar, an initial sense of incompleteness. And it's probably the case that each individual is born with their own scar. And so that scar creates an ache to return from what you were separated from. And this ache is the thing that you circle around. So as you develop and grow as a person, you circle around this ache and it drives you, and you're not even aware of it. You're not aware of it, but you may along the way be noticing that certain actions you take, it's almost like your muse. Something emerges from a place that you're unaware of that guides what you do, why you choose to do it. And if you truly listen to that voice, then you chase it. You take actions that chase it. And these actions can create the process of revelation where you go, oh, like say you're as a child, you're developing, you're getting older, and you're going, I did this for this reason. Like when you look back at your behavior, you go, oh, that's why I did that. Because you have the view of hindsight to look back on what you were doing and why. And so as you develop this process, you're always chasing this scar. You're chasing this ache to try to fulfill yourself. You're looking to fulfill yourself, to complete yourself. And as you said, this thing is always beyond. So as you create more scars and from this process of the Hegelian dialectic of being aware of an ache, witnessing it, creating a scar, being aware of an ache, like each time you do that, you are always circling the same scar, which gives you more and more information. And eventually you can get to a point where the thing that you recognize that you're circling is an awareness of the fact that all of the circling and chasing you're doing will never complete. You'll never complete. And so what comes to view is the thing that says to you, you don't need to justify anymore. You don't need to constantly chase. You can just accept, you can just believe, and then that thing is almost like it's like a spiraling. You're constantly spiraling, and then within the void of the spiral, within the center of the spiral, the more you spiral in a sacred way, in a way that is actually in alignment with your heart, your spirit, and sincerity, in the nature of reality, like the more you spiral toward it, the more that thing comes into view until it crystallizes. And so for me, literally this weekend, this process you're describing, that process culminated in the center of the scar being Jesus Christ. And I know that that's crazy for a lot of people, but with my own, I came very
That
much
is
aware.
the Hegelian dialectics explained through Zizek.
Yeah. Well, that was literally just my experience this weekend. Like I'm literally just explaining to you what happened to me this weekend.
This weekend is the philosophy of Zizek, basically. The death of
I got you.
Christ is the primary scarification, is what Zizek thinks. You can see in the
And
last chapters of the sublime object of sublime object of ideology. Yes.
yeah. And I think that this is what happens when a lot of people convert to Christianity, is that there's something like a search for completeness, a search for wholeness, and then they end up finding Jesus there. And then they're just like, oh, I don't have to do this anymore. And you give all of that up to Jesus, but then this is what repentance is. Repentance is a meta annoy. It's a change in perspective to where now you're not you're not identifying with the spiraling, you're not identifying with the scar. Instead, you're identifying with Jesus, and you start chasing that, and that becomes your drive at that point. And the interesting thing about this is that you can think of that original scar as being something like your original sin. Think of the act of being separated from God through birth is what happens when Adam and Eve are thrown out of the garden. What happens is that before they eat from the tree, they're like children who are unaware. They're in the state of positing reflection, like they're unaware of this lack. They think that everything's nice and complete, and then something calls out to them, which is the ache, this like desire to want to know more, this interest, like it calls out, and then they end up eating from the tree, and that creates a scar, and that scar is associated with awareness. And so now they become aware of the disconnection of the relationship with God, the wholeness, the universal. They recognize that and they become aware. And so they're no longer in this positive reflection state. They become aware of the external reflection. But God itself, like when trying to chase God for reconciliation and completeness, you can never become whole with God in that way again, because as you said, it's being a being of language, a temporal being of mind, is associated with being trapped in language, which language itself is inherently incomplete. So, and that's where the awareness comes from. Awareness comes from the fact that we can now create conceptual models, like we're trapped in this world of language, And so now we're incomplete. So trying to find God's completeness within language creates the ache and the spiral. And so this original so the ache is essentially like our original sin. It's our original incompleteness. It's like a distortion. And it's an asymmetry. It's a breaking of symmetry. It's the external reflection. It's a breaking of symmetry. It's not something to be thought of as shame or bad or anything like that, because without it, there is no ability to desire to completeness, desire to reconcile back with God. And so there's something actually sacred about our distortion, about our sin, because it is through sin that Jesus comes inside and purifies us. That's what he does at the crucifixion. At the crucifixion, he becomes sin, and then he enters us through our sin. And so what I've noticed for myself is that I can tell you my initial ache that actually drove me to do everything that I've done, which is always feeling a sense of inadequacy, always feeling as though I was stupid, always feeling as though I wasn't valued, and trying to justify myself as not being stupid. And so when I was younger, as a child, I was very much aware of this desire to justify and prove myself. And that was a huge part of why I chose to do physics. It's not the only reason. There are several reasons around it, part vanity, part interest, just being very interested in it. But another part is to prove that I'm not stupid. And so I know that that every time in my life I have been following a whim of the thing that I'm trying to chase down to become complete. And if you listen to my podcast, I talk pretty explicitly about the fact that I'm very cowardly in the way that I am, in the sense that I'm always trying to justify myself. So when you listen to my podcast, you realize that it's a giant argument in which I am trying to explain my model of reality, but because I'm so afraid of being thought as stupid or whatever, or someone's going to say this is nonsense, I create arguments that are easy to follow, the symmetry transformations. And so that's me spiraling around my ache. And eventually that spiraling brought me to the Bible and Buddhism. And eventually sense of incompleteness has always been held. And it hasn't been till recently to where I've conceived Jesus at the center of my ache, and I think I'm ready to get baptized. And so yeah, I'm very much aware of this. And one thing that I've also become aware of is the difference between the Buddha and the Tathagata and Jesus and what they are in the reality. Jesus is as being the God, as being the Word made flesh. Jesus is a being of God that exists pre-ache. So from the ache and the scar, think of that as creating a separation between heaven and earth. And so you have this space of language, the space of incompleteness, the space of sin, the space of samsara, the space of death and rebirth. You have this space down here. And we are born due to conditions within that space. So I call it like being an ache born being. We're born in the Buddhist sense of dependent origination. So we arise from the five aggregates, the five skandhas. We arise from that. And we arise around an ache or desire. So that's the first noble truth. And so as beings that are born within the world, we're always striving toward completeness, toward God. But Jesus is a being that is not born within that world. Jesus is born of the eternal, a being with agency prior to the ache or the scar. And so Jesus descends from above, down and below, to reach into us, to reach into our whole, our distortion, and complete us. Whereas Buddhism is a being born within the scar, within the distortion, as being born of the five aggregates, that is looking to settle, to no longer require to chase the ache, to be fulfilled. And so it's a process of dissipation of the ache and desire. So it's a being that is trying to reach upward by dissipating desire and ache from within. So one of them is doing it from within the scar, and the extent, the completion of that process is nirvana, such that you become aware and awakened, and you become a relationship with the Tathagata. But for Jesus, Jesus is the being that comes from above, that is not born of sin, that comes in and enters our sin and completes us.
As for the ache, the scar and the ache are not the same thing. You feel the ache when
No, I know.
you uh, when
The
you
scar is the consequence of the ache being
there
witnessed.
is when you establish a relation with a particular signifier that replicates the scar of the pure signifier. You don't experience trauma when the actual trauma happens. You will experience a trauma when it happens again. It always happens the second time. When it happens, inscribes itself into you, and you don't. You are in the symmetry.
Hmm.
The scar is responsible for your being of symmetry.
Hmm.
When it happens for the first time in your perspective, is actually the second time. There is a particular word in psychoanalysis that is a symptom. The symptom is a place of pleasure that is beyond your personal pleasure. Like there is the person you were before, but then it happens something that activates a pleasure that is more than your personal identification of it, and you become dependent on this because it enacts the initial trauma of the pure signifier, and then you go to the doctor or psychoanalyst because this pleasure that is too much for you, that is too personal for you yourself to accept it, it becomes a problem because
Hmm.
it's too much different from the structure of your identity.
Hmm.
The ache is a secondary event.
Yeah, I mean, I view the ache.
Yes,
I
and
view
then
the
I
ache as being something that exists within the emptiness associated with the multitude. So there is the multitude, then there is a incompleteness associated with it, and from within that is the subconscious in which an ache may arise, or and if it is the case that that ache is something like the invariant ache, the one that is the main driver of the Hegelian dialectic of the constant, every time it's like it's the same ache, then that thing bubbles up in whatever form. It bubbles up in some form depending on the current state of the scar. And then when it is witnessed, it's turned into an object. And then that witnessing of the ache turns it into an object, which then adds a new scar. And that is the process of the external reflection. It's like the ache is bubbling up, then there is this moment of awareness of and then identifying with the signifier, as you say, and that creates the external reflection, is the witnessing. It's a witnessing of the conscious. So like I remember seeing a video where they're talking about Lacan's critique of I think therefore I am, and it's saying something like the first I is the subconscious and the second I is the conscious. And so that's the process of the first I think, the bubbling up. And then the I am is the awareness. So that's like a communication between the other and the self. Um, yeah, so yeah, it's that the ache is not the scar. The scar is the witnessing of the ache into an object. And then that
I think
object
it's
comes.
better to put it that the ache is the way the scar looks like when you integrated the scar inside of you. Is not that uh, the the ache. I don't know what you just said. The ache uh, is primary. The scar is secondary. Scar that is the cut happens before you feel pain.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like a chicken and the egg thing, because it's like there's a chicken and the egg thing where being birds creates a scar, and it's almost like the scar and the ache come into
She
existence at
can
the
neg
same time.
because from your point of view, yes, the ache is primary.
Yeah.
Because what is really primary is the scar.
Mm.
Yes. And I think you know when Adam and Eve were in the Garden of Eden and they approached them in the form of a serpent and said to them, "If you bite into this, you will be like God.
Yeah.
You will be like God." And then they bite it, and they see they are naked, they are helpless, they are vulnerable, fragile. This is a profound misunderstanding, I think, because they see, I am vulnerable, so the devil betrayed me. I am not really like God because I am a fragile, vulnerable material creature. I'm full of aches. I'm full of limitations. But I think the central point here is that the devil was right.
Uh-huh.
Is it deceived into telling the truth, and it knew that uh, the truth will be seen as a lie from the point of view of humans. Because for humans, God is God. No, God is the ultimate completeness, is pure being, like heaven. There is no limitation. You see, you're powerful.
Mm-hmm.
God can't be a fragile mortal creature.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where the original sin came from. Like the original sin, they understood the nature of the pure signifier without putting the nature of the pure signifier into God. That
Uh-huh.
is the difference between humans and the devil. Humans say there is the pure signifier. Oh my God, there is my limitation. I have a will inside of me that contrasts me, and so I am responsible of a contract with God, responsible for a law that I don't understand.
Uh-huh.
And they say this: there is something out there. There is a will. The other, there is an intention. And the devil says the nature of God is the death of Christ. Like you see, you bite from the apple or fruit of knowledge, being eat an apple of whatever fruit it may be, and the devil actually believes, yeah, they indeed became like God. Like
Mm.
from the point of view of the devil, I didn't betray.
Mm-hmm.
The truth itself is what creates the betrayal. The devil merely said, "Oh, this is the truth." I didn't act actively, like with intention, betray you.
Mm.
The signifier betrayed them.
Mm.
God creates the Garden of Eden, then says, "Don't bite into the fruit." And he knew very well they will bite into the fruit. Like why God does all of this stuff? Because God is this uh, fragile mortal creature.
But I think one thing that needs to be.
Okay, when they say why God doesn't descend into heaven and liberates us from all sin, why God is hidden?
Mm-hmm.
Why there is a massacre on Palestine and God doesn't click his fingers and resolve the situation? Is
Mm-hmm.
because if God were actually to show himself, it will be just what is a signifier? It's mere thing, like similar, totally similar to a mere powerless man.
Well,
Like
you'd have a pure.
if he will to reveal himself, God will cease to be God. It depends
Uh-huh.
on the fate of humans, and you can't have fate if the object of your fate is not hidden.
Yes.
God
Yes.
remains hidden to elevate himself a God and from that place save us.
Yes. We ascend. That's the thing that allows us to ascend. It's like to have an ascension, you need a fall, and so you have a fall, and then you have an ascension, and then there's a difference between being in a state with the pure signifier, never knowing separation, never knowing descent, versus falling away from it, descending, and then ascending back up, because it's through the ascension that we struggle to enter back into relationship with God. So it gives us a compare and contrast between not being in relationship with God to being in relationship with God, thus knowing the truth and value of God, something that you can't do when you are trapped inside the pure signifier. What the devil really has, like, I think you're right if the devil truly is doing what it believes is correct, but the problem is that this process of thinking that you are God prevents you from um it prevents you from cohering. Like this perspective allows you to create a circular distortion that is isolated from everyone else. Because the thing is that if you're like God and I'm like God, and but we're different people, then then you're made in the image of God, I'm made in the image of God. We're different people. If we're both actually like God, then there has to be a symmetry between us. So that part of me that's incomplete is inside of you, and the part that is incomplete of you is inside of me. And so the thing that makes you like God is outside of you, whereas the devil would say that the thing that makes you like God is inside of you. And so when you think that way, you don't you cut yourself off from cohering with all the others and all everything else that is made in the image of God. And so there's a process of submission to something outside of you that allows you to ascend because you're trying to take your identity, your scar, and you're trying to cohere it in a complete way with all other scars. That's the problem. The devil's problem is that it has the capacity for a God complex where it can elevate its own scar above all other scars because it sees itself as God and it thinks that it's an internalized thing as opposed to recognizing that what is God, what is the process of completion is something outside of you as you just described. And so that's why the devil's
I
wrong.
mean, it's not that the devil is wrong. It's just a different configuration of the absolute.
Well,
Like the otherness, yeah, you can see as otherness, but then you can reverse it and say, but it's the otherness inside of me, so it's my estimacy, estimity, and so on. Yes,
it
you
is.
can say
But the
like
but the ethics then becomes recognizing that otherness, that which is you, with that which is God in you in another. That's what namaste means. That's the foundation of ethics. So this is the difference. Like, to be ethical is to recognize the God in the other beings, and then to elevate God above everything else. So and then it's saying something like there is a structure, there is an essence that is contained within all, and that essence is like something like the objective pure signifier, the symmetry, the truth, the one from which all other things arise from, and we're made in the image of it. And so when you follow Jesus' first command, which is to love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, that is to say that there is this pure signifier, objective, others, pure symmetry, unscarred thing. We're all made in the image of it. And then from there, you can love your neighbor as yourself because you see the equanimity of all the other godlike beings, and it's through ethical interactions with them, with the others, that allows you to have communion with God. And I'm saying that the devil is correct in that we are all made in the image of God and we are all God-like beings, but without recognizing the others and acting godly and ethically to them, then you can create this process of being isolated and thinking that you, the essence inside of you, is the thing that's God. So this is a God complex. Like for the devil to be truly correct, he must submit himself to the other outside of him. And that's how coherence is
yeah,
formed,
but
and
this is
that's how you move
a
towards completion.
simple narcissism. Like I believe I'm better than you because you know you as a singular material being in reality don't matter. Only God is God. I can eradicate all social structures and pretend my good is everything good. And I think it's a bit more complex than this. That is
I would say that at the foundation of the moral truth is, and even from your own description of it, it's
like understand. You are moral. Like moral being moral is not the same thing as being a good person. Like being moral is to your actions be semanticized in relation to the moral law. So yes,
mhm,
if you do wrong, that is a sin because it contradicts the moral law. So if you do good, it's good because it's in accordance with the moral law. But this, in as much as moral people recognize the intrinsic, like the merely tautological dimensions of the moral law in the way, in the point, in the place in which God is.
mhm,
Like in as much as I am not identical to the moral law itself, I can afford myself to be a moral being. It's I did is wrong, not because I decided that my action is inherently moral, but because there is a moral law that says it's wrong. Like it's wrong. You can't do that. That is not something that is permitted, and so on. But it's
mhm,
not. It doesn't have this dimension of being tautological, like an action event for itself. The moral law in itself is for itself. Like imagine you are God. What is the moral law that says that your action is moral?
mhm,
Is your own action. You are the moral law. Everything you do is moral. This is why the action of the moral law of God is the most sublime form of evil possible in existence, I think. Is
mhm,
the point in which the good and evil coincide.
mhm,
I decide like because he in itself he doesn't have the distinguishability good evil that will pose a lack of coherence of your action to that particular standard. If you are
mhm,
the standard, even whatever you do is inherently moral.
mhm,
Like imagine if you were to constitute the moral law is an act of evil that instaurates the moral law as such. Like
mhm,
imagine you are a woman with children. There is a man that is deeply depraved. He wants to kill them for no fucking reason. You say, how do I defend my children? I can't. I am in the far west. There is no police. The depraved man is the sheriff, the man which is supposed to defend me, my children, my well-being. I am seconded by criminals. There is no way out.
mhm,
So what did I do? I can't be a good person because I can't defend my children. That is, I am a mother. My place in society is to defend my children. I can't be a mother if I don't accomplish this task.
mhm,
I can't. But the alternative is I send them, my children, to this depraved man. I do
mhm,
wrong. What I do to escape? What I do? Normal people in this situation will stop believing the situation they're in because they have no capacity to challenge it to affront it in first person without destroying their own subjectivity of being moral.
mhm,
What I do? The mother does an action that destroys morality in order to uphold morality itself.
mhm,
Like I killed my children. I killed my children. Why? Because I can defend them from the praying man. Because everything I will do to them is still more affectionate than what that man will do. This
mhm,
man, this action is wrong but it's done in respect to the moral law itself. It's not only an evil that is superior than simply being evil. Is something that puts good and evil in a circuit. How do you say when there is a circuit, electrical circuit that fails, it begins to burn. Short circuit,
A breaker.
circuit breaker.
Yeah,
I
a
don't know
breaker.
the name. Like there is a break of circuit between the good and evil. They collapse into each other, become the same action. The
It's a
same
pair.
action
It's
embodies
a
the both
yeah.
parts. This is the dimension in which God resides. Whatever he does is still good in a certain way.
Yeah.
This is what man can't do. Like if he believes he has to be to keep being a man. And what does the devil recognize? I see. In the place of God, good and evil are in the same place. I despise this action
Yes.
in the
Yes.
most
Yes.
radical way. And
Yes.
in this way, I condemn all creation.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
what I do,
Yes.
I expose the truth inherent to the place of God,
Yes.
and I tell
Yes.
it to all the creature of creation, because I hope they destroy their own subjective morality so they can recognize the truth in God. And then I will stop feeling so petty. But the devil thinks I am still a good moral person.
Yes.
That is, I
Yes.
am still I am a good guy. I am merely exposing the truth. There is no consequences on what I say. I simply the truth. The truth and God is good. Is a good action.
This is
It's a
beautiful,
good
Dario.
action. But what the devil's what is the unconscious of the devil? Say he does this for pride. That is
Hmm.
because he secretly believes he is superior to other beings because he knows the truth and God, and he's the only one in creation
Yes.
which is the true depository of the truth of God.
You're absolutely correct. Everything you're
This is
saying is
the nature.
identically
I
correct.
want to do the destroy. I wish you pain. I wish you suffering, and
Yes.
you deserve it. You
Yes.
deserve it because you misrecognize the truth of God. I am his greatest believer. I am the one which loves God better than everything else. And so in this way I am the one who betrays God in the most tragic way possible. This is
This is
why the devil is so fascinating. It's not
yes.
just I like
Yeah.
to do evil acts. No, it's a very tragical position.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it's collected with knowledge itself, knowledge
Yes.
about the nature of God. He has
Yes.
become burned by his nature. He has
Yes.
lost the innocence in the way he can be a creature in creation and believes that everything is fine. The
Yes.
devil is a prisoner of his own eye, his own way of seeing. He,
Yes. Yes.
but
Yes.
is the prisoner or is a king of hell, but is the prisoner of his own prison. He doesn't
Yes.
want to escape. That is the
Yes.
most depraved thing you can do without being God. That is the worst place you can be. You can kill a person. You can do whatever it is. You say he deserves. I can't be touched, but I am still superior.
Yes. Yes.
This
Yes.
is utter insanity.
Yeah.
The problem is not wrong, like in a certain way, and one is truly tempted to march on his path and begin to hate everything in existence, let this kind of corrosion corrupt your very soul, because it's liberating
Yes.
if you think about it. Why I must condemn myself if I can just fuck it all around, start burning things, it will be fine, still be fine. Why
Yes.
not?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
This is beautiful. This is perfect. Everything you said is
like
exactly perfect.
so in this way, Adam and Eve are they acknowledge the same truth of the devil without realizing that it is the truth. It is the nature of God.
Well, that's the thing. This is exactly what the crucifixion is. It is a reconciliation of this. This is exactly correct. And the main point, the point that you've discovered is the devil's truth that it discovered about the nature of God, in the sense, in the inability to incorporate that into oneself. It is to see something and then think this is not worthy, it must be condemned. It is the inability to incorporate that truth into themselves. It's beyond their capacity to accept and hold. And as such, they become nihilistic, they become cynical, they become angry, they want to burn it down. So it's almost like what happens when living in the truth of the placement of suffering and sin in reality. It's almost something like you recognize there's sin, you recognize there's suffering in the world, and this can be not only in the world but in any system. So you can take this to a political system as well. Like imagine a satanic view in a political system. They look at some system, make it be capitalism or some sort of constraint, some sort of societal norms. So think about societal norms and how they develop. So societal norms themselves are something that comes from the past. So this becomes the structure or the constraints or the scar or the spirit of society. So that becomes the name of the father. So that becomes the father. These constraints, this social structure, this political structure, whatever it is, that becomes the constraints. That's the matrix. And what happens is that if you're a being inside of it, these systems themselves are never going to be perfect. And so you can have a system that is truly corrupted. So you could have a system that is truly an evil, corrupt system that really is full of oppression, deceit, evil. Like, and if you see a system like that and you think to yourself, my moral view is actually better and that this thing needs to be torn down, then you might actually have a legitimate righteous claim. But if it is the case that the system that has been constructed is something like a legitimate attempt by humanity, by society, to try to construct moral and ethical systems, try to create systems that actually create flourishing, but because of the pure difficulty of finding the correct answer, because of the difficulty of creating consensus, because of the difficulty of knowing what's right or wrong, because of the difficulty of legitimate bad actors seeping into the system and corrupting it in certain ways, because of all of that, there is no such thing as a pure, perfect social structure or political structure. They don't exist. And so what can happen is someone with a satanic point of view can look at a structure, see something that is not doing correct, see something that's not doing well, and then condemn the structure as not being worthy of existing. And what that does is, if the system itself really does come from some sort of legitimate like dynamic or tension between a struggle to do good and actually produce something valuable, then it's going to have a large amount of good and a large amount of bad, because a complicated system is going to have a large amount of both. But if someone looks at the system as a whole and only sees the bad, then they take the entire nature of the structure, the entire nature of the father, and they condemn the entire thing as being only the negative thing that they observe. And then what they do is they say to themselves, this structure that has been developed over thousands of years of development through humanity playing information processing games and developing culture, all of that years and years of computation and struggle is worthy of being condemned. And instead, me being born as a singular being within a single lifetime, given my experience and my knowledge, I am the one who can tear down the entire structure and then rebuild it in my image and bring in the utopia, because it's really just this. And so this structure
I think like uh, the devil despises God because he loves him. Like he was the closest creature there was in creation to God. There is no stricter relation between the devil and God.
Mhm.
Basically, when he got too close, like I think he could have burned like Icarus from the Greek legend. Got
he
too
couldn't
close
handle he
to
couldn't ha- the sun in that
the
legend.
sun.
Yes. The sun in that legend is the realization of the truth of that moral law that you said he couldn't incorporate. That is something like, are you holy and saint? Like, do you have the depth of sacrifice? Like, this is the point of the crucifixion, is that it's almost like you have an infinite depth of evil,
but that infinite depth of evil is filled by an infinite depth of like love and forgiveness. And so if you're trying to fix a system, you need to have the capacity to hold it without being corrupted by it. If you look into the sin of others and you become corrupted by it, then you don't have the depth necessary to hold it, witness it, and purify it. This is what Jesus does. And so this is the thing that the devil can't do.
I think the nature of Jesus is in God is exactly what the devil despises.
Yes,
Like God couldn't keep up to the standard. The devil himself add to what God should be.
think about it. Think about it this way. Think about so you can think of this realization that the devil had as the moment that Jesus realizes that he has to be tortured and killed for the sins of others. So think of it that way. It's saying something like God is saying to Abraham, you must kill Isaac. This is another instantiation of the thing that the devil sees and hates. God tells Jesus, you must walk into the thing and be tortured and crucified. And this is the thing that the devil sees. The devil gets to that point and says to himself, this is not fair, this is not just. Anything that would declare that this action must be taken for salvation, whatever, is not worthy. And I want to tear it down. Whereas Jesus goes, is this what you ask of me? Then I will do it. And I'll do it with love and a desire to glorify you. But when Jesus is on the cross and he says, why God, my God, why have you forsaken me? It's something like this is the paradox. This is the
Is
realization
God
of the
that
paradox.
forsakes himself? God.
God forsakes himself. What that means? So what does that mean? What does that mean? God. So what that means is that God is condemning himself. God is coming to the thing that the devil saw, and he is literally saying to God, like, "How dare you ask this of me?" It's like God is condemning the nature of God that God asks us to sacrifice. Like this is the level of sacrifice God is asking you to do. God is asking you that if I tell you to kill your child Isaac, then you should do it out of love for me. And so God himself is saying that is too much to ask. God is telling himself that that is too much to ask, which is to recognize the thing that the devil recognizes. But instead of becoming angry at the nature of it, it submits to it, and God and Jesus says the work has been done. And in that moment, what was pure and zero of sin and completely undeserving of the judgment took on the judgment, took on the sin, thus being able to enter it because he's not corrupted by it. This is precisely exactly what you're saying. Jesus and the devil are presented with the same truth, and the divergence in their reaction to it is the divergence between good and evil and reconciling with God, because one of them requires pure forgiveness.
I think the devil is a creature that got confronted with the truth. Jesus is not a creature that was confronted with the truth. Jesus was the
Uh-huh.
truth. Always had been so. Yes, he's fatally a mortal creature, uh, and so on. But Jesus didn't have to accept a truth because he had to embrace it since the beginning. Like it's a different kind of game here. Like the devil was like a positive reflection at his best, without negation. Then you go too close to God, you see the most shit fuckery amount of aberration you can imagine. And you are forced to confront that this is the truth, the truth of the things you loved. Like it would break a normal mind. You know, imagine what it could be to an angel, which is supposed to be a higher form of intellect and so on. Uh, and yes, and Jesus was the aberration. Was like the truth that God humiliates Himself in order to sustain His own greatness. This is the
But the,
duality of the pure signifier. That is also humiliates itself
Mhm.
to sustain his own greatness.
Yes, 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 yes,
He also the pure signifier. The moment
yes,
that
yes, yes.
he is in himself, is the more non-God possible. The more like the most futile little shit like you see there is not possible that is God.
Yeah.
That is just like the most insignificant, worthless piece of like is being.
This is what the Romans. The
Being,
Romans.
what means being? That's the tragedy. I think there is a story in the Bible which tries to get why God did how to reveal His nature, like in that way, not in trigonology way, but in the most literal way possible. Is the
Yes,
book of
yes,
Job.
yes.
The book of Job. The book of Job. There is this man that.
Well, wait. But before you go into that, it's exactly what you said in this idea that God has made himself very small. This is so deep. It's like we're going down the
It's just
recursion right now.
small and big are the same thing.
Exactly. Exactly. It's the paradox. So think about it. It's the paradox. God is the smallest and the biggest. So that creates the massive gauge. Think of it as the idea of, am I a big fish in a small pond? Well, the reason why you don't know whether or not you're a big fish in a small pond is because you don't know the size of this pond compared to the size of all other ponds. But if you not have the knowledge of the tiniest pond possible and the largest pond possible, then you have the largest gauge to measure where you fit. So that encompasses everything. So God must be the tiniest dust, which this is something that explained in Isaiah 40. He must be the tiniest dust, the nothing, the servant, and the largest at the same time. And so what happens is that Jesus is showing you that to have the great power and knowledge of God like the devil had, and to use it without corruption, is to become the smallest servant. So it is to make your identity tiny, and by making your identity tiny, you make God's identity larger because they're not in conflict with each other. And there's
Becomes a
something about
kind of indestructible. That, like there is no scar you can put it that we will challenge it. It has a
yes,
really a set that scar as a is inherent truth because he has made himself empty.
yes.
Yes,
And so what that does is that scar of the evil, this paradox that you pointed out with the story of the mother, is something like with that infinite evil, it has the capacity for infinite good. And so you have so it's like the existence of both coming into existence together. And
yeah.
this is the nature of being a being that has agency, thought, and identity is the binary. It's the separation. So when they eat
Because
from the
only in the place in the possibility of infinite evil is the true absolute. Like you are not just limited by one thing. You can always go beyond a given state of affairs. So when it is corrupt and wrong, there is always infinite potential of or renewal of transgression of there is always hope.
yes,
There is
yes,
no such thing that is done. There is always a space open. And this can
yes,
be a possibility for infinite torture, but always a possibility of redemption.
yes. So
And
Jesus entered.
actually,
Yes.
the book the book of Job, there was Satan who says, this man believes in you just because he is wealthy, he has everything. She just like the others. He doesn't respect you because you are God. He respects you because of his position.
Uh-huh.
Challenge him. Challenge his faith, and see if he will continue to believe in you.
Yeah.
And that's what he did. He destroyed, killed his family, his daughter, his cattle. They gave him a permanent illness, like rashes
Leprosy.
on the
Did he get
skin.
leprosy? Leprosy. Leprosy. Did he get leprosy?
No, leprosy,
Yeah.
no,
It
like
doesn't matter.
rashes on the skin. Leprosy entails that there is a part of your body that fall off.
Mm.
Have at home is correct. Correct that he had like a skin itchy,
Yeah. Yeah.
covered
I got you.
with worms, possible things, but maybe there was not permanent damage.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
But
I
like,
understand.
but
I understand.
yeah, uh,
Yeah, go ahead and
And
continue.
then,
Go ahead and continue.
the doctrine at the time of Job was, if you something bad happened to you, it means that you deserve it, because God can't be wrong. Can't be wrong. God is the absolute. So in this way, they misrecognize what it means that God is absolute. It means that
Yeah.
God is good. If something bad happens, it's for good. And God, Job keeps on believing this because he realized something. Like, if God is God, who will defend me against God?
Mm.
So is God is bad because he destroyed me without any singular reason that I can understand? Yeah, then he's in the place of absolute power. I cannot try to resolve this situation without postulating in God itself, the redeemer of my situation. So
Mm-hmm.
he
Yes.
starts to
Yes. Yes. Yes.
uh,
Yes. Yes.
so
Perfect. Yeah.
to pray to God. All my friends are for forsaking me, with brackets. They are stupid as shit. They don't understand. But this is not written in the Bible.
Yeah.
Yeah, not understand what means that God is God. So what I do? God, come here, confront why, defend me. Say me why you did something. What you did. What God says, he descends upon earth, but he doesn't justify his action. It merely says, I am more powerful than you. Submit. When were you when there was a creation? I created everything. You are only a little speck of dust. You are insignificant. Look how much powerful I am. And at the end, it it makes Job richer than Job was before. His family is resurrected, and the friend of Job that didn't support him had to pay with something that I don't understand. I have forgotten.
Yeah. Yeah.
In psychoanalysis, if you show power, it means that you are powerless.
Mm-hmm.
True power never shows itself, because if you are to, yeah, to impose your force, it means that there is something in you that challenges it. This is castration. You are powerless towards your own act of power. If you do an act of power, automatically you are powerless. And this
Mm-hmm.
means the revelation of God. I am more powerful than you. Job, submit. See how much I am God. It means I have submitted to your moral superiority, Job, which, from the point of view
Mm.
of a common Christian, this is pure heresy. So
Yeah.
a human that is more moral than God, are you insane? What this means? God has an unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
God has done something wrong. He didn't understand how he is implicated in the evil he does. So
Mm.
what he does, he humiliates himself in the figure of Jesus Christ to regain his place as the moral law. So I say,
As a moral.
you human, have shown to me that you have a moral superiority in me in the position of pure faith, because that you have no other chances. I will substitute myself into your human place. I will submit to myself to show that I am still greater than you. I am greater than
Hmm.
you in your own humanity. You understand this? How much, at the same time, immense piece of shit, and at the same time, immense, like a saint, how great is God in this, in this place, in this, what He had done. He has made Himself human in order to renew himself, his own nature. He has infinite potential of self-transgression. That is the absolute. This is what Christians don't understand. Something happens wrong, it was God's plan. The way of God are numerous and contorted. You don't know, so you have to keep in your place. But God offers you the possibility of transgression itself. God offers you the possibility of erasing sin and constitutes another moral law.
Yeah.
This predicament is inherent into the nature of God. This is how it keeps going on in cycles. I think people don't get to this point because it will entail that God is greater even in being evil. Like he's so transgressive that there is no need for him to eradicate Satan.
Yeah.
Satan is not a challenge. The dark side of God is enough to compensate for evil.
Yeah. So there's this idea of the nature of like what it means to eat from the tree. Like I think that so part of me, like the way I think of it is that the nature of being scarred and separated from God, to have your own identity, is to enter into the world of samsara. It's like creates separation, and that separation creates an ache, which is like the sin, the original sin. And so when you have agency, then you have the capacity to make decisions, right? So so with the knowledge of good and evil becomes agency that they didn't have before, but agency without consequence is not free will. So for you to actually experience life like God, then your decisions affect what is created, and those creations have consequences. And so if you imagine playing a game where every decision you make doesn't matter, it doesn't affect how you experience, it doesn't make you happy, it doesn't make you sad, it doesn't make you, like, the game has absolutely no value and no meaning without the capacity for consequence or the ability to lose or the ability to be disappointed. And so the like the depth of what you can experience of good is bounded by the depth of what you can experience, which is bad. So what that means is that for us to actually have free will that's meaningful, such that we can be made in the image of God, so that we can be creators, you have to accept this suffering, this capacity for suffering. And this capacity for suffering comes into existence the moment the separation occurs or the moment the scar occurs. And so what that means is that there is no good without bad. And this creates a duality between good and bad, or good and evil. It creates a duality. They're actually one object. They're not separate objects. The idea that they're different objects is an illusion. And the paradox that you pointed out is the reconciliation to say good is bad. Because without bad, there's no good. Without consequence, there's no meaning. There's no value. And this is the inherent nature of existence. And so when you have in Buddhism, the first noble truth is being suffering, or dukkha, and you recognize that you enter the world of samsara due to this desire, this craving, this desire for identity, because with identity comes the craving. So there's this sense of identity, and this sense of identity creates this binary of self and other. There's me, and then there's the other. And so with identity, you enter into samsara. And so the very nature of existence that has meaning requires suffering. And so when you're confronted with this truth, how do you respond? And that is the foundation of it all. And so what God is doing is God is saying something like, look, we can debate why the world of sin was created, why creation was created, but let's say that came from some ache to within the pure signifier to be known and witnessed. And so you need an other to witness. If there's a pure signifier, then there's no other. So when you get compare and contrast, you have an other. This is your external. You have something external to observe you. And so say that there's a completeness, and then there's a desire to be witnessed, a desire to be held, a desire to be loved. And from that ache, it's like, okay, well, that's an ache. And for that to come into existence, evil must come into existence. It just can't happen any other way. And so what this means is then it's like, how do I respond to it? And part of the response is with the existence of a separation, there's a fall, and then you want coherence. You want to be back. It's almost like you have the separation, and now you want to ascend into the self that has this sense of pure love, which was the cause of the original initial ache. And so to do that, you need to cohere to yourself. You need to cohere to others. That requires a process of submission. And it requires a process of submission to the truth and the reality of suffering. This is what Buddhism tells you to do. This is what Christianity tells you to do. Satan could not handle that truth. And so God comes into the world to tell you, here is how you love. Here's what love looks like. And so I come into the world and I demonstrate something that you cannot demonstrate yourself, which is, for one, to be pure of sin, so to be pure of distortion, so that when you go to be judged, when you go to the altar to be judged, if you're free of sin, then there's no ability to be condemned, or there's no justification for your condemnation. And so to be condemned when you're purely free of being condemned, and to accept that willingly, and to accept that while being humiliated, this level of love, this sacrificial level of love, is godly love. It's infinite love. It's the thing that enters into distortion, enters into sin itself, allows the sin to exist without collapsing it and telling it it's bad. It allows it to be witnessed, and then allows it to reconcile itself. And this is what I'm saying what's happening with me. It's like this distortion, this ache that I'm striving for, this lack of completeness. When you feel this suffering, this dukkha, this ache, it's like, how do you respond to it? And what you can do is, if you respond to the Hegelian dialectic in a loving way in which you accept at each moment, because you may have an external reflection, that doesn't necessarily mean that you accept it. You may see the truth and you can't handle it. And so you create distortions to protect yourself from it. That's a path towards Satan. But if you're someone who can accept the truth and go, that's the truth, I submit. That's the truth, I submit. And you submit every single time, then you can strive towards coherence. And you can strive, and then you can understand this inherent nature of incompleteness, distortion, and sin, and accept it and reconcile it. And then what that does is once you identify that you'll never be complete, but you see the signifier that leads to the pure signifier, which is Jesus Christ, then that's your drive, and you can sustain that drive. And so this is what it is. It's like God is demonstrating to you what pure love is.
I don't think that pure love means accepting. So what you say was something like I don't accept the nature of Jesus' love, that is the nature of sin, and so I imprison myself, etc. Versus I love sin, so I do love, so I can free myself with setting my conditions, something like this.
You cut out. It's basically like a love for coherence and the truth. It's like the love for, think of the spirit of the truth as guiding you, and the truth can be harmful, it can be painful, and it can be hard to accept. But if you love the truth, then you will accept it no matter where it leads you. And that requires a submission to the fact that, if you may think that this truth looks unjust, but it's like, well, that's just the nature of reality. Like a Buddhist will tell you this. That is just the nature of samsara. That's just what it is.
Yes, the Buddhist is right, but this means see the contradiction of this statement, because it tells someone to accept that the truth is like it is, like the what that someone is doing is nothing, something that is inherent in the truth.
Yes, yes, yes,
Like
yes, yes.
like I think Satan is just the embodiment of evil, and the devil is something like Mephistopheles is like how evil looks like from the point of view of the so-called human soul.
From the what?
La-
The what?
Human soul.
Oh, from the human soul. Yeah, yeah.
Like is evil that is essential for your transgression, that constitutes your freedom, and in this way also your purity, what is good in you. Yes, so I think what condemns the devil is not like I can't accept the sin. The sin in itself indicates the moral law. No, I can't accept the sin is inherent to the nature of the moral law. I would prefer there are two separate things. Why?
Yeah.
Because I'm still human, a creature. I'm not in the place of God. I can't tell to Abraham and kill your son for my own amusement, or what the hell do you want?
Yeah.
I think this is always like a human nature of us. We can't accept the very way we are human. Human is that we have a limitation, and these limitations are also inscribed into the nature of the absolute. There is no such thing as you will accept this and you will be bereaved from, you will reach nirvana. Nirvana, which from my point of view is the feminine, is created by the negation of the father. So is always something retroactively constructed. There is no such thing as absolute freedom in itself, like something experienceable as absolute freedom. You can't say to people, liberate this, accept this. You can accept this only in as much if you accept this and disregard something that is not that. You can't accept it and put everything in a totality and we still pretend to think to think that you it's not something you can do.
Yeah. Well, I think
It's totally, it can't be a moral statement to accept the truth. If you are in the truth, there is no such thing as acceptance. There is nothing to accept.
Well, no, I think
Think
you.
this structure. If you search for the truth, truth is escapes you. If you are in the truth, there is no such thing as the truth. Like you can accept this only in as much as you are still imperfect.
I think it's something like, I remember a friend of mine, he went like whitewater rafting. So you're in a raft and you're going down like through some river, and there's like violent waters and rocks, and you have to like navigate through them. And his instructor, when he was with them, because this guy, my friend, he's a big, strong guy, was told like you're struggling too much, like you're trying to control things, like you're using too much muscle to try to control what happened. Like you need to flow. You need to flow. And I think that that's more of like accepting the truth. It's something like letting go of all of your tension, letting go of all of your resistance, and just letting go. It's like entering in a flow state. And I think that
I don't believe this. You can enter in a flow state only in as much as you ignore what goes against you. There is always a limitation involved.
yeah. But hey, man, it's 12:20. This was a
Yes.
great conversation. Very good, very productive. I enjoyed your description of the devil and Satan in his situation. I don't meet too many people who can process this in this way, so it's good to have a conversation with you.
Yeah.
I do have another friend who does. And actually I did some episodes with the podcast with him. I don't know if you saw the episode I did with Ryan, but he's one of the other people that I could talk to about these things in this way. But yeah, it was a very good conversation. So I think this is good.